an advisor to the UN Secretary General during the 2014 crisis in Ukraine. Thank you very much for being with us, Robert. And I know you want to talk about Donbass, and we'll do that in just a moment. First of all, the UN, what role do you think the UN could possibly play in this crisis?
Well, that depends, of course, on the role the Security Council could be playing, and that depends in terms on the, the willingness of the permanent members and some very important involved permanent members to actually let it happen. But despite that, let's not forget that the United Nations is very active on the ground, but more in a humanitarian way.
And the Security Council, though, I guess the problem is always going to be that, you know, Russia will have a veto.
Indeed. So only if there would be a big reset in the relations between the US and Russia about this very conflict, I think we can rule out a role for the United Nations. But having said that, this was also the case in 2014 when I was shortly involved. And the Secretary General did send me as his personal envoy. He used Article 99. So I do feel that the United Nations, in a crisis which has become now so big, should still do its utmost to see if at any point it can play a more proactive role.
Right, and now Vladimir Putin has been saying that de-escalation has to be, or has to involve, serious negotiation on the Minsk agreement relating to the Donbass region. Is there, in your view, a framework relating to the Minsk agreement that can satisfy both Russia and Ukraine?
Well, as you know, EIP has actually issued a report today about the dangerous stalemate and also what are the prospects for a sustainable ceasefire and keeping the Minsk process alive. And this is not just a report of EIP, it is actually part of a dialogue with experts, both in Moscow and Kiev, which we actually have been having for the past 2 years. Out of deep concern for this dangerous stalemate, we actually made the rather unusual step to go public today. And what is our key message? A message which is very much the message coming also from very concerned experts, both in Moscow and in Kiev. The main message of this report is that a sustainable ceasefire is a prerequisite for political progress. Whether this is going to happen in the Minsk format or any other format, the same issues will come up. But the real issue that has to be dealt with first is, in our view, a sustainable ceasefire. We haven't had a ceasefire for 7 years. We're talking about a ceasefire which is a non-existing ceasefire. So for 7 long years, we've seen a steady, low-level, but pretty vicious conflict, which has now cost the lives of almost 14,000 Ukrainians, many more thousands also wounded and millions displaced. If you don't deal with this issue first, then you will not be able actually to get to political progress. And our report, and this is also the reason why we decided to come out today, we also have a concrete proposal for a coordination and verification mechanism. We call it CVM. It would be actually working from within the OSCE SMM. I'm very worried about the OSCE SMM. We need to preserve it. And what is happening? What do we see happening? That nations actually pull out their observers at this point. I find that not a good thing. We have to keep the SMM on the ground, and we have to reinforce it with a concrete mechanism, which actually would then, for the first time, lead to across the line of contact, coordination and verification of what is happening. You can never maintain a ceasefire just by monitoring. You need a verification. I'm not blaming the SMM because so far the parties haven't been enabling the SMM to do so. We actually have been analyzing this now for some time with our experts. We have also been in contact with stakeholders like Berlin and Paris, and of course also the OSCE. And it is again out of deep concern with the present situation that we decided to come out, because we do hope that if there is still a window for diplomacy, that actually this CVM could become well, let's call it a building block in a package, a much
Right.
needed political and security measures and also humanitarian measures to de-escalate.
But even if there is a ceasefire and the SMM you're talking about, the special monitoring mission for Ukraine, helps, or whoever helps, brings about a ceasefire, isn't the problem with the Minsk agreement that it kind of formalizes the situation as it is and will give Russia effectively a say in the affairs of an independent country, Ukraine?
Yeah, I know that this is the worry of certainly of the Ukrainians themselves. On the other hand, there is a very strong feeling now in Moscow that Kiev indeed doesn't want to implement the Minsk agreements. You know, these Minsk agreements are very loosely structured. They call about certain things that need to happen, also including other security steps like the withdrawal of all foreign forces from the territory of Ukraine. But they also talk about special status. What certainly needs to happen is actually a renewed understanding how these loosely structured elements of the Minsk Accords are going to be implemented. But it will only start, and I repeat myself, but it is important, the key point which you're making, it can only start with a ceasefire. If you have no ceasefire, how can you build the trust for all these difficult steps?
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, Robert Serry, I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
New documentary has thrown fresh